Hello and welcome to Everybody Has a Story with Jeff Seltzer. I am your host, Jeff Seltzer. If you listen or watch every week, thank you so much. It really means a lot to me. If you're new to the podcast, welcome. And I think you're going to enjoy a lot of what you hear. We have plenty of episodes in the past. This is episode number 18. We've gone over lots and lots of different topics, such as Disney, such as celebrity autograph collecting. We've talked about things such as wrestling. We've talked about cage fighting. We've talked about immigrating to the United States. So we've gone across a very diverse set of topics. Hope that you can find something you like, whatever gravitate to. Go for it. Let me know what you think. Always happy to hear feedback, plus or minus, in terms of what you think of the podcast. As I'm always trying to get better and learn along the way. If you do want to leave feedback, or if you want to find us, you can check us out on Instagram at Everybody Has a Story Pod. On that Instagram account, feel free to DM me. The DMs are open if you want to be a guest. If you have any feedback, any comments, ask if you could follow the Instagram account. If you could maybe comment on some of the pictures or some of the posts that are there. It's also the best place to get all the up-to-date information on the podcast. So please do that. Additionally, we're on YouTube at Everybody Has a Story Pod. We are available on pretty much all all podcast platforms. We're on Spotify and YouTube and video. Audio in those two locations, as well as in Apple, iHeartRadio, Amazon, Pandora, and pretty much anywhere else you could find podcasts, you could find us. If there's a place you can find podcasts that we don't show up at, please shoot me a note, let me know, and let me see how I can get it up there. Additionally, my personal Instagram is at Seltzer77. You can find out all things Jeff Seltzer at jeffseltzer.com. Lots of really cool stuff there, so please check that out. Additionally, the show's email address is everybodyhasastorypod@gmail.com. So if you want to be a sponsor, if you want to send me something that maybe isn't Instagram friendly or isn't something that can be easily shared via Instagram, definitely email the show at that location. Additionally, across all these locations, please make sure to like, follow, comment, review, and all the good stuff. The algorithms like it, I like it, and everybody's happy at the end of the day. Last week, we did have a show that was about a minute and a half long. It's probably less of a show, more of a PSA. I hope that it reminded people to vote, to get out and to, make their social impact and, utilize that privilege and that right they have as an American, if they are an American in this country. So thank you all who did go out and vote. Really, really appreciate that. For me, it's something that I'm proud of, the fact that I've been able to vote pretty much. I did vote actually every year since I turned 18. So very, very exciting stuff. I know Marcus Brandon was a little disappointed that the show was only a minute and a half last week. He actually messaged me and was like, "Hey, I thought there was an error with the show." There was no error. I just wanted to, utilize this platform to remind everyone to vote. Also, a little behind the scenes here. Now that we are 18 episodes in, it's getting a little more challenging to get guests. So we'll probably be more, let's say, solo pods coming up with intermittent guests when I can find them. Coincidentally, I might have a guest for next week. Working at it. We'll see what happens. We'll see if it comes together. But I will try to make sure that the minute and a half PSA from last week is the shortest podcast that we do going forward. With that said, I did want to talk about what I did this past weekend. So this past weekend, my family and I went to Philly for the weekend. Lots of really cool stuff. The girls, my daughters, were out of school on Thursday and Friday. As in New Jersey, this is often teachers' convention week, where even since I was a kid, I grew up in New Jersey. Thursday and Friday of election week generally is off, as the teachers have some kind of convention in Atlantic City that they can go to, they can learn more about, they can, get whatever updated teachings they need and such like that. But obviously, as a student and as a parent, always enjoyed the fact that Thursday and Friday we were off of school. So with that, my wife and I both took off as well, and we went to Philadelphia as a family. Couple of things we chose to do when we were there. On the way to Philadelphia, we did stop on a college tour. We stopped at TCNJ, which was pretty exciting. My wife is an alumni from TCNJ, so we were able to check out the school. This was largely due to the fact that my older daughter is a junior in high school and will be applying to college in no time. So we wanted to start the research. We wanted to kind of expose her to different things out there, right? So whether she wants to go to that school or not, we wanted to show it to her so she can see what let's say, a suburban kind of campus life college looks like. Additionally, on Friday, once we were in Philadelphia, we took a tour of Drexel, which is very, very different. Downtown Philadelphia, looking at a city school versus, I guess, more of a suburban school. So whether my daughter is interested in one, the other, or not, at this point, we're still very early. wanted to get a sense of what types of things she likes. Does she like smaller classrooms, larger classrooms? Does she want to be in a city? Does she want to be in a campus? Kind of a hybrid, what that looks like. And then based on what she comes back with us with, we'll start working through some more ideas for other schools to look at, and hopefully we can help her on her journey towards college, which will be here before we know it. With that said, though, those two campus visits were actually just because we were already going to be in Philly. We decided to add them on. The main reason we went to Philadelphia was for something called the Rocky Run. So I'm not sure if anybody out there is aware. I know my buddy John was the one who told me about this. A few other people that I've seen on Instagram and on Facebook have done it as well. There was a race that they've done the last couple of years, I believe, and they did it yesterday, which we were a part of. Was the Rocky Run. So taking a step back, for those of you that aren't aware, Rocky, the movies from the I guess 70s, 80s, 90s, and the 21st century. It's spanned so many different decades at this point. It's crazy. The Rocky movies took place in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Lots of really cool sites. There was the stairs of the museum. There's a Rocky statue, stuff like that. So what they do is they've organized both a 5K and a 10-mile run that take place in a lot of the areas that Rocky was in. So my buddy John ran it last year with his buddy Rich. He told me all sorts of great things about it. So we decided to plan a weekend in Philly around this race. So yesterday, Beth and I got up super, super early. We were in a hotel in downtown Philly. I think we got up like 5:45 in the morning. Ubered over to this race start, which was scheduled to start at 7 o'clock, but it starts in corrals and queues. So even if you're there, plenty of time. Like we were there probably about 6:30. Got lots of really cool pictures. The race started at 7 o'clock. But then we didn't actually start running until probably about 7:40 or so. It was cold. It was definitely a cold day. It was like, I think, high 40 or so. So definitely felt it. Definitely was a little underdressed for the weather, but is what it was. With that said, we did run the race. It was a lot of fun. Fairly flat course, couple of hills. I think per Beth's watch, the elevation was like 50 feet plus or minus at some point in total. So there were a few challenges here and there, but overall, it was a great race. Really fun. Met up with some friends, saw her friend Cassie and her friend Cassie's boyfriend Sam. Again, met up with my buddy John and his buddy Rich. Had a lot of fun, got lots of really cool pictures. Why am I saying all this? So running is something that for me has been in my life and has been a part of my life for a very, very long time. In a previous pod, I think back in my solo pod, I talked about the fact that I kind of by default fell into running. Figuratively, I didn't fall into running, but kind of ended up running for sports. Just real quick reminder for those of you who didn't listen to solo pods. So growing up, I played baseball. Wasn't really that much of an athlete. Started high school, decided to try tennis because I was told nobody got cut from the tennis team. Apparently somebody gets cut from the tennis team because this guy did. Eventually decided to start running. So I did winter track sophomore year, which was fine. Super cold because back in the 90s, winter track was outside in New Jersey. It's not necessarily the best conditions for running in December and January, but we do what we do. And then in junior year, I ran cross country, which then goes back into the story from the solo pod about the other Jeff Seltzer, which is always a fun one. So definitely take a listen back to that podcast. I think it was episode 10, give or take. So take a listen to that one. Some funny and interesting stuff there. With that said, so after junior year, I didn't really run that much. Youth was on my side. Kind of worked out a little bit occasionally, but probably not as much as I should have or needed to, because when you're late teens, early 20s, you think that you're gonna feel young forever and you'll have muscle regardless, no matter what you do. Okay, so get through college, graduate college, and my friend's fiance at the time was a huge runner. She would run marathons, she ran half marathons, stuff like that. So we used to go cheer her on at the New York Marathon and all sorts of stuff like that. Really, really fun to watch. And I was like, hey, this would be really cool. So based on her, I was inspired to get back into running. So initially, like 99, 2000, I started running some 5Ks, stuff like that. And then going forward a little bit, I ended up training for a full marathon. So in 2002, I ran the New Jersey State Marathon. I think it was called the Jersey Shore Marathon. It's had a couple of names over the years. At any event, it was like 20 plus years ago. And that was that. What I have found over the years in terms of running, so that marathon specifically, 5Ks, half marathons, whatever else like since then, is for me, running as a whole is it has a couple of different purposes for my life. So number one, obviously, as I'm getting older, as I'm sure most people in their 30s, 40s, and older realize as well, your metabolism tends to slow down. So for me, when I was young, like I was 139 pounds, 5'8", super skinny. I could eat whatever. Like I used to eat like two Whoppers, large fries, and a soda, and I would not gain a pound. Years ago, I would joke that I was trying to gain weight and never could. 47-year-old Jeff wishes I could still have that mentality and that metabolism, but your body adjusts, life changes, and this is where we are. So going through life again, number one of the things that running has given me is the fact that it's given me kind of a purpose or a way to stay in shape, as well as to a way to try to keep weight off when possible. Right, I can no longer eat two Whoppers, a large fries, and a soda, and hope to stay net neutral or lose weight. So running definitely helps out with that. Number two, what I would say also is that running gives me a great mental health break pretty much at all times. So I do run with other people sometimes. So taking a step back, when I was marathon training back in 2001, 2002, I will say that was part of mine and Beth's love story, in the fact that was something that we kind of became friends over, and then kind of bonded over beyond that. I'm not sure if she really ran much before that, but as I was marathon training, she would start running with me a little bit, which was nice, right? At that point, I don't know if we were really dating yet or we were starting to date, but it was something that we had in common, and we just started kind of like doing together, which was great, right? Anytime that you find someone that you're attracted to and that you like, it's awesome to have as many things in common with them that you can share and you can bond over and you can experience together. So that was really, really great. So that was, again, part of the experience there. Again, oftentimes run with other people. Sometimes I'll go to a race with other people, but then run by myself. If our pacing's different, if we're feeling different, or whatever. I mean, like in high school, when I ran cross country, not well, sometimes I would start a race with other people, but then very quickly I would recognize that they are significantly faster or just better than I am. So I would tell them to run ahead, and then they would beat me by like 5 or 10 minutes. So, it's also important, I think, to recognize like what your limitations are and realistically what you can do. So that's kind of part of it also. So sometimes I'll run with friends. I'll let them run ahead of me, or I'll run ahead of them, whatever it is. But a lot of it is obviously the common bond, the friendship, stuff like that. Getting back to what I was saying before, though, in terms of what I guess selfishly what running does for me is not only does it help me to stay in shape and help it when I have a race, it kind of motivates me to train and I have something to look forward to. Additionally, it gives me plenty of me time, which, as some of you may or may not know, for me, I have three things in life that I'm always looking for. I'm looking for us time, family time, and me time. So, from an us time perspective, so that's me and Beth, me and my wife, making sure that we have plenty of time, that we're not losing connection, that we're bonding, that we're on the same page, and that we have time spent together. So, whether it be a date night, whether it be dinner, just even taking a walk outside together, stuff like that. Family time would be what I look at as the expanded family. So myself, my wife, and my two kids, time that we spend together. So whether it be going out to the movies together, whether it be going to the mall, whether it be going on a trip, whatever it is, I think that's important too. But thirdly, what I was getting into, and this is kind of where I guess my personal mental health comes in, is the me time. So for me, I am, and people often kind of like have very, let's say, funny conversations with me about this. Like I do consider myself an introvert. Now, with that said, I know, would an introvert really have a podcast? It really, really feels weird. But for me, I kind of see myself as a hybrid introvert of sorts. So let me take a step back on this one. So uh, a lot of people that I know of or work with and such like that, they, I guess, and I think Beth described it best. Like, do you get your energy from being around people, or do you get your energy from being by yourself or with smaller groups or just like with your friends? So there are people that I work with, there are people that I know, people I've known for years, that get a lot of energy out of going to like sales conferences and like big meetings and big things like that. Like that's kind of like what they get off on, or they get their energy on. For me, the idea of going to a sales conference is always a little intimidating. And I'll say that by the time the sales meeting's done or the end of the night, I am just exhausted. For me, just the flight there was exhausting. Just everyone knows my travel issues and my motion sickness issues. But outside of that, just being in a room with hundreds of people for a full day and then having to go out to dinner and then going out to do activities afterwards, like that for me is exhausting. So I kind of look at it as that is kind of my way of looking at how I'm an introvert versus a lot of people that I'm around with, let's say professionally, look at that and they can't get to it soon enough. They get the energy, they go to these meetings and they all of a sudden feel like, hey, I'm set for the year, I'm set for everything. This is going to drive me and motivate me. Like we're all wired differently, and I 100% get that. So for me, it's just not what I am. what I will say is that I always often look at myself as a hybrid introvert, and the fact that I think naturally I'm an introvert, but I do try to come out of my shell occasionally. I mean, this podcast is, I guess, one of them, but I'm also trying to evolve as well. So I've recognized over the years that professionally to get ahead, I mean, at least, less like 20 years, probably even long before then too, introverts tend to fall behind because that's not necessarily what leadership oftentimes looks for. So over the years, I've kind of learned to adjust and adapt because that's what corporate America looks for, right? Is they're looking for people who are willing to and are able to adjust to the situation. So that's what I've done. I've kind of made my career off of that, which is fantastic. I mean, this is what we have to do. With that said, obviously, I come home on the weekends and come home on nights, and I'm a little more exhausted, kind of a little more worn out, but this is what we do. So, what was I getting at? Right, the me time aspect. So, for me, from a introvert perspective and just an overall mental health perspective, running gives me a lot of time to myself. So, running does give me a lot of time to run by myself, think to myself. It's a bit of therapy for me as well. So sometimes on like a Sunday, I'll do like a 3, 4, or 5 mile, let's say, jog, run, walk. It's kind of a hybrid of the three of them, and just kind of give it as a chance for me to kind of think through my thoughts, think through everything I've been through for the week. If there's any issues or challenges in life, I kind of process through it, walk through it, and think through, okay, it's not the end of the world. Here's how I'm going to get to it. Here's how I'm going to solve a lot of personal problem solving, let's say, stuff like that, and a way to kind of just clear my head for the most part. I do have other methods that I use on top of running to myself, walking to myself, stuff like that. And before I go any further, also, I just want to throw out there, obviously, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a psychologist, psychiatrist, any of that kind of stuff. So if any of this resonates with you, I'm happy to help. I'm happy to share my story and stories. But at the same time, obviously, if you're going through any kind of crises or any kind of challenges, definitely recommend, talking to a professional and helping. Mental health is super important to make sure that we're on top of. It's something that, growing up 20, 30, 40 years ago, like was never top of mind, was never really a thing. I love the fact that it is definitely something now that people are focusing on because, physical health is very important, obviously, but I do think mental health is just as, if not maybe more important as well. Because if your body is right, but your mind is not right, obviously it can lead you down like a dark path, let's say. So definitely, talk to somebody, get help if you need to. Okay. So beyond running, other things that I do oftentimes to help out from a mental health perspective, right? So I go to the movies by myself sometimes. So this past week, for example, and this was actually pretty fun or pretty interesting. So I ended up going to the movies mid to late last week just to kind of clear my mind, get a day to myself. As you would expect, or as you would assume, on a Wednesday, let's say midday to late day, there's not many people in the movies. So much so that I went to see back-to-back movies, and yes, I did pay for both movies. I have the AMC Stubs A-list deal, so I get to 3 movies per week. This is not a paid advertisement, but I was able to reserve myself a ticket for 2 different movies. Cost me nothing incrementally. So yes, I did not sneak into movies, but I did the right thing here, I think. So for 2 movies back to back, I did see 2 movies, and for both movies, I was the only person in the theater, which is always interesting to me. So I've done it before where I've been the only person in a theater, but I've never done it where 2 movies in a row, nobody else was in there. I did see 2 very random or different movies as well. So I saw Hit Pig, which I believe was the first movie that I saw. Again, only person in there. Definitely a weird movie if you take a step back. Basically, it's an animated movie rated PG about a pig that, I mean, you could say abducts or kidnaps an elephant to try to take him to Vegas to go to the circus. The elephant thinks he's going to India to go back home, but he gets taken to the circus in Vegas. Whatever. It's weird. It is what it is. I wasn't that into the movie, but for me, it was just nice to sit there for an hour and a half, kind of like in the darkness with nobody else around me, in my thoughts. I mean, nice thing about being in the theater by yourself also is you can take out your phone and not bother anybody else. Oftentimes I like to go to the movies because I can kind of disconnect and not use my phone. But for this one, I kind of just made some notes for myself, kind of thought through some stuff. And it was super, super helpful. So there was that. Then I followed up by seeing Terrifier 3. So I think when I talked to Megan a few weeks ago, I'd mentioned that I was potentially going to go see Terrifier 3 in theaters, which I would say if you're looking to see a gory, over-the-top, ridiculous horror movie, maybe go see it. If not, then probably don't. I think it's not rated or it's NC-17. Super, super bloody. Way too graphic. Story wasn't that great. It was fun, I guess. It was what it was. But if you're not really into over the top gore and horror, it's probably not the movie for you. In any event, it made it a lot easier since I was in the theater by myself to kind of look away, cover my eyes, cry if I needed to. No judgments here. And just kind of like, be to myself once again. So it was fine. Uh, long story short, going to the movies by myself is something that I do like to do sometimes from a mental health perspective. To kind of take a step back, rest, take myself out of the world for a few hours, just kind of enjoy what I'm enjoying, have some movie theater food, movie theater candy, and whatever else like that. What I'd say additionally, what I like to do to try to help myself from a mental health perspective is I take a lot of notes. So I do use OneNote. Sometimes I've tried using the journal that I think Apple iPhone released earlier this year. Didn't like it as much because it didn't sync across devices. But I do use OneNote oftentimes when I'm trying to figure things out or trying to kind of like get my mind right. Right. So if let's say I'm in a situation personally, professionally, whatever else like that, and I'm not necessarily happy with how the situation went or the conversation or whatever else like that, what I'll try to do is I will take notes on the conversation afterwards. And then this way I can evaluate it in a future time. Oftentimes we tend to romanticize how a conversation went and we think to ourselves, hey, that conversation didn't go as badly as I thought it did, or hey, that conversation was better than I thought it did. I do like to think that after the conversation, if you take notes when it's fresh in your mind right away, you're probably the most honest with yourself, and you can look at it and you can say, okay, that conversation was worse than I thought it was, or it was much better than I thought it was, or you know what, it was exactly as I remember it. But this way, also years later, you can look at it and say, okay, so you know, this person is never going to change. I've had 3 conversations with them. This is how they are. This is how they're going to be. So why should I expect something different, right? So, the definition of insanity is, doing the same thing multiple times and expecting different results. So that's how I look at it. I mean, weirdly, the definition of training or practice is probably the same, right? Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. So I guess maybe practicing or training is insanity. But anyway, I don't know. So with that said, I do like to keep track of my notes, whatever, especially as I'm getting older, my memory isn't what it once was. So to look at it, so I can look back and say, okay, this was cool. This is what happened. This is not so cool. This is not what happened, whatever. And again, to be fair and honest, I don't journalize every conversation I ever have. But sometimes there's something that's, let's say, important or interesting in life, whether it be super positive or super negative, I will try to write it down or journalize it this way, it years later or moments later, I do remember the reality of it versus the fantasy of it. Additionally, I talked earlier in an earlier episode about how I have a whole system for my financial investing, my personal finances, dashboarding, and stuff like that. For me, oftentimes, I do have stress and I do get anxiety sometimes about will I have enough money? Can I retire someday? Like how does that kind of work? So what I found over the years was creating my own dashboard where I put everything in one place definitely helps. So I have one Excel spreadsheet that has like in one spot, it'll have, 401ks, it'll have investments, it'll have house value, stuff like that. So I can look at it and I can say, um, what can I say? I can look at it and I can say, okay, so I do have more money than I think, or I have less money than I think, or whatever it is. Like I can be just honest about it as opposed to forgetting about 17 accounts all over the place. Um, Similar to what I said earlier about, organizing and writing things down, that's generally just a theme for me in life. Because for me, one way that I can reduce anxiety and reduce, I guess, issues is just making sure that I'm top of it, project managing and making sure that I'm aware. Same thing goes for me at work too, right? So at work, I will make a list of all the projects that I have to do. Sometimes I'll get overwhelmed if like people are talking about project this, project that. So what I'll do is I'll take a step back, make a list, and I'll write down, okay, I have these 4 things I need to get done. Then I can use that to prioritize. I can use that to kind of get through what I need to get through. And then as I cross things off, I can feel good about it and not think, hey, did I forget something? Like it's all here. Once all 4 things in the list are done and there's nothing else coming in, I can check it off and I can say, okay, I feel good about what I did and I'm in a good place. So for me, that works. Again, we all have different systems or different ways of doing things. If people can remember everything that they want to do or have to do, that's great. For me, writing things down, making lists, so organizing things definitely helps. Beth often tells me, and it's 100% true, that my stress manifests into physical ailments, which is 100% true. Stress definitely hits people in different ways. For me, I tend to find that when I'm super stressed, like my shoulders get tight, my neck gets tight, like I feel weird physically, stuff like that. It reconciles with a book that I read from a bunch of years ago. There was a doctor named Dr. Sarno. I don't remember what his first name was, but Dr. Sarno, he had a bunch of books that came out. So I read a few of them a few years ago. Super, super helpful in the fact that it basically validated a lot of stuff that I was thinking and a lot of things that I had said here, in the fact that, you know, the more stressed out you get and the more things you go through, and if you don't have like a solution and such like that, eventually can lead to various, not necessarily illnesses, but like physical ailments again. Things that you can go to the doctor for, and the doctor says, no, you're fine. Years ago, I was stressed over something, went to the doctors found absolutely nothing. And eventually realized or recognized that it was just largely based on the fact that like I was stressed and just not in a good mental place at the time. So again, that kind of leads to what I said earlier, in the fact that getting your head right definitely helps out in terms of getting your whole life together and feeling good and all that kind of stuff. What did all this mean? I mean, obviously we're all wired differently and we all work in different ways. For me, again, it all comes down to making sure that if there are stresses or things that are causing anxiety, just trying to, not necessarily get ahead of them, but just trying to accept them. So understand like, yes, this is happening, not just deny it and kind of accept that it's happening. Try to get to the root cause of why they're happening. And just try to kind of like manage it and ease into it and figure out what's going on and work towards solutions to resolving them. Some stresses in life you can't avoid, right? Like, so just being perfectly honest, a few weeks ago, my older daughter got her driver's license, right? So a day or two before the test, obviously got a little stressed, me personally, but the idea is, you don't want to make stress contagious. That's kind of what I've seen as well, right? When something's going on or you're feeling something, it's personal to you and it's not necessarily real to everybody else. Once you start sharing some of those things, oftentimes people will, act differently, feel differently, whatever else like that. So I guess try to figure out when it's appropriate to share your stresses versus some of them to keep to yourself, because sometimes stress manifests stress and it could be very, very like the domino effect, right? Like one thing happens leading to another, leading to another. So for me, it's a case of, again, my daughter was getting her road test to get her license. I was nervous, wasn't going to share it. A couple days later, she took the test. She passed it. I was super, super excited, super, super happy. Obviously, the stress and anxiety went away. But again, telling her a day or two before that I was stressed about her taking the test would not have been productive or helpful to anybody. So again, that all worked out well. But remember, every situation is going to be different, and you're going to work through what you're going to work through. With that said, last week on the podcast, actually last week on the Instagram, I did solicit some ideas from people in terms of how they deal with stress, right? This past week with the election, whichever side you're on, whoever you voted for, it doesn't matter. People, I'm sure, were stressed on both sides going into it, coming out of it, or else like that. So I was curious how people kind of adjust to it, react to it, and what they do. So, and anything that I share here, again, as I said on Instagram, is going to be anonymous. So I'm not going to say who shared what, but there are definitely some interesting, let's say, trends and insights here that people shared that, I've done myself, I've experienced myself, I've utilized myself. If any of this resonates with you or is helpful to you, that's great. If you have anything else that you'd want to add, definitely shoot a note to me via Instagram at Everybody Has a Story Pod. I'm always curious to see how people manage through stress, anxiety, mental health challenges, whatever else like that. So, and I will say, just going into it as well, I don't condone, I don't condemn, I'm not judging here. These are all just different ways people deal with it. Some are probably positive, some negative. But at the end of the day, this is how people work through their stress. So one person mentioned that they eat and drink. Some people eat and drink more food, more alcohol. Just in general, people stress eat. Totally get it. Everybody has their own way of doing things. I've seen that. I've done it myself. Totally get it. Smoke weed and hike in the mountains. On a side note, weed is legal in more states now than it was 5-10 years ago. So again, if you're out there listening and judging, don't, because weed is legal in a lot more places now. But regardless, smoking weed and hiking in the mountains sounds like a fantastic way to reduce and alleviate stress, right? Again, you can get some me time, you can get some family time, whatever you're looking for. And using weed to free your mind definitely is a method. Another one likes to write poetry, go to the gym, and play video games. This is how this person manages their anxiety. Love it. Absolutely love these as fantastic ideas. Can't say that I haven't done these myself. We all work in different ways. Drink alcohol, lots of it. Someone else shared, which was similar to the other one. They also mentioned they oftentimes will go sit on the beach any time of the year. I'd imagine any time of the year is probably more spring, summer. But if this person does relieve anxiety and helps their mental health to go to the beach in December, January, even if it's up here, let's say the Northeast, we all have our ways, right? We all have different methods, different things work for different people. Lastly, and I would say this is one that definitely resonates strongly with me, and I'm sure a lot of people as well. They said a package a day keeps the sadness away. Absolutely. I mean, a lot of people will, stress shop or shop to kind of reward themselves or to kind of like make up for it. I did see, I think, a funny meme this past week, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago on Threads. Somebody had said that if a certain candidate won, they were going to buy the new PlayStation 5 Pro as a way to kind of console themselves. But if that said candidate lost, they were going to buy the PlayStation 5 Pro to reward themselves and to celebrate and congratulate themselves. So, shopping definitely helps. The idea is obviously make sure that it doesn't get out of hand, but definitely buying something new for yourself, definitely short term, midterm, or long term will definitely help your mental health. Or so they say. Anyway, I think that's probably all that I have for this week. I definitely said a lot, probably put out more than I probably should have or needed to. But, working without a guest and working through is just something as personal as mental health. We'll see how it lands. If you have any feedback or anything that you want to share, definitely shoot me a note or shoot me a comment. Everybody Has a Story Pod on Instagram, sending a DM. Once again, we are available on all podcast platforms: Apple, Amazon, iHeartRadio, Pandora, Spotify, YouTube, lots of other places too. If you do need help, there are lots of resources out there from mental health perspective. Like I said, like I am not a doctor, I'm not a therapist. I'm just kind of walking through my experiences, which have been both positive and negative throughout life, right? I mean, I'm in my late 40s, so they say I'm midlife. I mean, if the average life goes to 76 or 80 years old, I'm probably beyond midlife, but that's probably a bit too morbid for today anyway. So again, there are lots of resources out there. Talk to your friends, talk to a spouse, talk to a partner, talk to whoever you have. If you're having any troubles or challenges, definitely very important. With that said, if you want to be a guest on this podcast, definitely shoot a note to me, reach out again through the DMs. I'm working on a guest for next week. I may have a guest, I may not. If I do have a guest, that guest will be on. If I do not have a guest, I will put out another solo pod. I will have other topics to talk about, but this was one that I thought was super important with lots of things going on in the world today, to make sure that everyone knows that, there is a safe place, or there is a happy place for everybody. Try to find it. Try to see what makes yourself happy. Try to see what makes yourself comfortable. Everything is going to be okay if you try to make the most of it and try to create a positive situation around you. Anyhow, have a great week, and we will talk soon. Take care.